Hey, this is Jason at FireplaceBlowersOnline.com. Here we've got a Avalon and Lopi rear mount blower kit. This is part number 9900118. Replaces older part number 9900138. When you purchase the kit, it includes everything you see here. So we've got the blower and the housing. You've got a variable speed controller. That is the rheostat mounting bracket. We'll go over that in a minute. Some hardware, we'll go over that. Let me just pan over to the compatible models lists. So this covers the Lopi Answers, the Endeavors, Liberties, Leydens, and the Avalon Pendletons, the Rainiers, the Olympic, the Avalon Arbor, and the 1250 wood stoves and the 1750 wood stoves. So if you've got one of these models, this is definitely the kit you need. The newer models are cross-compatible, so they are backwards compatible with the older models. So if you're replacing an older model where your manual referenced the 9900138, this is perfectly backwards compatible. So a couple things. Let's talk about the blower first. Dual convection blower, as you can see. This is 100% ball bearing. A couple things we do slightly differently here. You'll actually see that you can't see the bearings there on either side. There's a bearing there. There's a bearing in there. They are capped and sleeved. That just helps prevent dust and debris intrusion. So that helps prolong the life of the blower. You really want to keep these guys clean still. So regardless of the quality of the blower that we're using in these guys, you want to keep them clean. Very difficult to do. It's actually going to require you to remove these things from the stove, once or twice a year. Get some compressed air in here, and if possible, it's difficult. You want to make sure those fan wheels don't start collecting a big hairball. You should see the ones we see in the shop. So keep those as clean as possible. Debris on the fan wheels will basically take them out of balance, and that basically leads to the bearing failure. So a couple things. First things first, we've got a speed controller here. I'm actually going to call in Jim here so he can point out a couple of additional things to me. If you actually want to flip that rheostat over, Jim, what you're going to see on the bottom side here is there's actually 3 magnets. You get some really strong neodymium magnets. And if you just put it right in the center of that bracket, on I believe it's the Arbor and the Leydens, you basically just attach the rheostat to that bracket. There's instructions. These 2 bolts on the bottom are designed for that bracket. So just walk through the installation instructions. So if you've got a Arbor or a Leyden, you're gonna follow that procedure. Most of the other models will not use that bracket at all. And then in your case, that rheostat will actually just magnetically attach anywhere on the stove that you want it to. Those 3 top bolts are for actually mounting to the stove. You'll see the actual flange there. You've got one there, one behind the wire, second one behind the wire, and the third one there. And that clip there is basically it's like a wire standoff clip, and that is for the thermostat sensor. So Jim's kind of holding the thermostat sensor wire back here. Depending on which model stove you have, that clip will either be on the bottom of the stove or in the back of the stove. So you'll want to do that. It just prevents the wire from hanging on the hot surface of the stove. 2 loose wires. Those are the 2 loose wires that will attach to the 2 loose wires of your rheostat. So pretty simple. Now, one thing to point out here, we test and send these kits out with that temperature sensor loose. Jim, I'm actually having to pick up that temperature sensor really quick too, because most people don't know how this thing works, but the temperature sensor is actually recessed into kind of like a semi-triangular trapezoid shaped clip. And if you take your hands, you can kind of just squeeze the end of it. They actually just kind of push into place. So you basically just push those into place like that, and they just it's a pressure fit. So they'll slide into place. Installation instructions will have procedures on how those actually get pressure fit in, but we actually leave that sensor loose when we ship it to you. So one thing you'll want to do when you get it, if you want to use the temperature sensor, and the reason I should back up, the temperature sensor is not used on a couple of the models, which is why it's left loose. If your model or you want to use the temperature sensor, what you need to do is, I'm gonna try to pan over here, the rheostat, the bottom grommet that you see pictured there, there you go. That actually pops out, and what you can do is actually loom those wires through that same grommet that the rheostat wire is on, and then you can see how they're pulled up through the housing. Okay, the other thing to note then is once you've got that done, there is a black and white wire. That black and white wire will be attached And what I'm gonna have Jim here do is he's just gonna carefully take those wires apart. And we're actually gonna attach those wires together. So one wire's got a female connector, one wire's got a male connector. They can only attach one way. And there you go. You've essentially added the thermostat sensor. It's as simple as that. Another thing to point out here. The housing on the newer models is slightly longer than the original model. So I'm gonna have Jim grab a tape measure here so we can kind of point out the difference. So in this case, if you look at how the inside length of this is, it's just a hair under 13 inches. So that's essentially the size. The actual size of that blower is 12.8 inches. So it barely fits into that 13-inch housing opening. The older housings are more like 12.5 inches long. So if you've got an older blower, chances are, we do sell replacement blowers for this, the chances are the new replacement blowers that we have will not fit your older housing. So either you have to make some accommodations to the housing to fit the newer replacement blower, or unfortunately you're gonna be forced to purchase the full new kit again. Now obviously the positive of having to purchase the new kit is long term. If you ever have to replace the blower again, now you just have to replace the blower. You've got the updated housing and they'll fit just fine. So other than that, if you guys have any questions, we're always here to help. You can call us at 262-989-4882 or 262-989-4883. Or you can email us at support@fireplaceblowersonline.com. And we'll be happy to answer any installation related questions or product related questions you have. But again, very nice kits. These make a absolute huge difference when you're adding these to a stove. It's not unexpected to get anywhere between a 40 and 60% efficiency improvement in terms of air distribution and heating distribution when you add one of these guys. So definitely a worthwhile investment. All right, thanks again, everybody. We appreciate your time.